Hello everyone, welcome back. Last week I uploaded a short video showing my new ATC setup, and I got so many questions that I decided to give you guys a full walkthrough. But first, one question that I got plenty of times is, why did I ditch the rapid change ATC systems that I had been using the last months? There's no good reason. The rapid change worked great and works great. I just felt for a new toy and a new project, and that's why I decided to get an ATC spindle. After doing some research on the web, I decided for the Jianken JGL80 spindle, 24,000 RPM, ISO 20 tool holders. I bought the spindle directly from Jianken, whatever, on their Alibaba store, and this whole ordering experience was pretty awesome. As soon as you bought the spindle, you get a direct counterpart on their side that you can kind of talk to via WhatsApp, and this whole process was pretty smooth. They reach out to you when they have questions. They send you pictures as soon as the spindle has been produced or shipped, and then after, I think it didn't take more than 6 days, the spindle arrived here in the US. It was nicely wrapped and packed in a solid wooden crate, and the spindle comes with a ISO 20 tool holder, so one that you can get started, and also 2 wrenches to tighten the collet nuts on this tool holder. These kind of guys. This spindle has an 80mm body, so it was a direct replacement for my older G-penny spindle. It's a bit longer though, but that doesn't really matter with my setup here. Once you have such a spindle, you also need a lot of other equipment. Everything that this spindle does in terms of tool changes is driven by pressurized air. That means you need a pretty big compressor. I got a 10-gallon silent compressor, and I would not recommend to get a smaller one. This is already kind of cutting it close. And you also need, very important for these kind of spindles, you need clean air. That's why I have this 3-stage air filter. And then you need a lot of air solenoids to control the different air streams that this spindle needs. And of course, every air stream has different pressure requirements. Therefore, I also had to get 4 different pressure regulators. To make this a bit easier to understand, I'm gonna show you how such a tool change works. So now we have a tool loaded, as you can see, and I'm gonna unload this tool. That means the spindle will activate air in, which means it will open the drawbar. The tool will be dropped, and it's not only being dropped, it's going to shoot out the spindle, so you always have to really have your hand close to catch it. On the same time, the spindle will activate the dust removal stream so that the cone is cleared from chips. After that, air return will be activated to retract the drawbar. And then finally, when I turn the spindle on, you will hear that air sealed, this kind of air curtain, is activated to keep any dust or chips off the spindle. This was how you unload a tool. Basically, it's the same mechanism to load a tool. We activate the drawbar again. Now it retracts, and when I turn the spindle on, you hear this constant airstream that is protecting the spindle bearings. If you want your machine to do all these steps automatically, then you need a macro file. In this macro file, you have to tell the machine exactly everything it needs to know and needs to do, like the tool rack position, the amount of tool holders or slots. You have to tell whether the machine needs to load the tools from the left side, from the right side, from above. If you want to open a cover, you have to define the exact sequence of the air solenoids with all the waiting times and so on. And this can be pretty complex. I post the link in the video description, a link to my macro. You won't be able to use it as is, but it might give you an easier start if you plan to do something similar. One thing I forgot to mention, this spindle has two integrated sensors. One sensor checks whether a tool is installed properly, and the other sensor checks whether the drawbar is activated or not. And I use these sensors in my macro. During all the different steps in such a procedure, I double check whether the drawbar is activated when it has to be activated, whether a tool has successfully dropped or loaded. Because just imagine when you forgot to turn the compressor on and you want to load a tool but the drawbar isn't activated, then there's a huge risk that you end up with a damaged spindle or tool rack, or worst case, both. Another important thing that you have to keep in mind if you want to get an ATC spindle is that you need a lot of Z clearance between the machine bed and your X-axis. This, for example, is a pretty standard bit, 8mm diameter, maybe 25mm long, and it barely fits under the machine. This means you will have a hard time finding a spot for your ATC rack. I also had that problem with this machine, therefore I ended up sacrificing almost 2 inches of my machine bed on the left side, so I could mount the ATC rack along the Y-axis and drop the tools below the machine bed. Otherwise, it just wouldn't have worked out. As you also can see, I have this nice motorized cover controlled by 2 small servo motors that keeps the tool holders clean when I cut anything. But now, enough talking, let's do some real tool changes. I'm gonna zoom in so that you get a better view. Currently tool 5 is loaded, and I'm gonna tell the machine to load tool 3 instead. If I want to empty the spindle, I run the command M60, and then the machine will drop the current tool and not load another one.